That was you? I am stuck. Like, I am so stuck, y'all. Like, truly. Cause, as a woman, that scenario is terrifying. Well, and I guess, like, as anyone, that is a particularly terrifying situation to play out. But, like, I can only speak of my experiences as a cisgendered hetero woman. So I can tell you, given my past experiences, what we just saw in that room was wholly terrifying. Because, wow. Okay, so, story time. Back in art school, the program I was in was really small. It was the animation program. Literally was just this one small section of one building at this massive art school, which literally almost every other department had their own building, and yet they're actually trying to phase out my degree program. It was animation. So anyway, people who were on the animation floor, we all knew each other. Well, to an extent, everybody knew somebody who knew everybody else, you know? So anyway, I had a class, and there was this guy. We'll call him Dan. So, there's this guy named Dan, and I'm genuinely a nice person. When you meet me, like, I will be the sweetest person you will ever meet until you give me reason not to. And then you're gonna understand why you should have been sweet in the first place with me. But anyway. So, Dan saw my interactions with him as something more. Like, Dan and I were Facebook friends because we had class at the same time, and when you're in college, like, you want to be in communication with as many fellow classmates as possible. So, of course, he's on my friends list. You know, we see each other every time in class. I was kind of known because I would ride a Razor scooter, like, to get around the campus. And so sometimes I would get to class early because it wouldn't make sense for me to, like, go home between classes because I was living off campus. So I would be in class early a lot of times, and Dan would, like, I guess he realized that, so he was in class too. And we would just talk. Like, I was like, oh, me and Dan are friends or classmates. You know, it's cool. It's copacetic. And I started noticing every once in a while, Dan he was a poet. He would always write these, like, love poems. So they started being, like, really flowery, like fairy tale lovey-dovey, you know, like butterflies in the stomach, this sort of description, right? And that's how they started. And I didn't notice it, but I'm sure that those popped up after his interactions with me. I didn't put two and two together because, look, your girl was working on her second degree, okay? I already had an associate's. I was trying to get my bachelor's. And I genuinely wasn't interested in Dan. I wasn't. Nice guy, just wasn't my type. And I'm the type of person where, like, the entire world could know I like somebody, and, like, I won't know if they like me back. Like, unless somebody is like, I like you. Like, my husband didn't know he liked me until he kissed me. And then I was like, whoa. Mind you, every day after class we were going out and getting food. So we were kind of dating. But anyway, back to Dan. So, at this time I actually had a pretty tumultuous personal life, like love life. I had a guy best friend, and he and I were talking. Like, we never really fit romantically, so that wasn't a thing. But I did have a toxic relationship that I was on again, off again with, and in between I had I would date here and there, and I noticed that these lovey-dovey poems would sometimes get sexual in nature. Like, one specifically was talking about like licking all over her body and stuff like that, and then like what really clued me into what was going on was one day I had mentioned I had a boyfriend. Like, I had been dating a guy, things were kind of nice, we had a little bit of a history, and so I was like, yeah, we're gonna try this, you know, just talking, because Dan and I are friends, right? It's conversation between friends. I get home, I get on Facebook, and this new poem by Dan, as his Facebook status, is like violent. It is violent, it is rage-filled, and I'm reading it and I'm like, oh no, something between him and his girl goes sideways, because I didn't know if the man had a girl. I didn't know. I genuinely didn't know. That relationship was short-lived, and that was fine. I really was not one to enjoy wasting my time, except for the toxic guy. But we all have bad habits we need to quit, right? Some people have smoking, some people have alcoholism. I had that, dude. But anyway, we're not here to talk about him. So I started noticing a pattern that whenever I talked to Dan and like I talked to him about just life, what's going on, that's when the flowery poetry would come up, and the sexual poetry about like just, and it was graphic. But then like when we did have conversations, or if I did bring up a romantic partner, or even like the male bestie, Dan's poetry got really violent. Like, I'm talking, you stupid, blah 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 blah. Like, he's losing it. And I had a friend, and I'm not sure, I'm gonna go ahead and put his name in here. We'll call him Marcus, I guess. I don't know. I'll talk to him after this, see how he feels about it. But anyway, so Marcus had this class with me and Dan, and I was telling Marcus about this because I think I had another class with Marcus. I'm explaining to him this pattern, and one day Dan, I'm losing track of these fake names, Lord. One day Dan, no, it wasn't that Dan hadn't made it to class. Marcus and I were in another class together. And I was like, yo, I think there's something not right with him.
You in danger, girl.
And so I was like, I talked to him about something one day, and this was his response. And then I talked to him another day about love interest, and this is his response. And I'm telling you, it was violent. Like, I hope somebody smashes your head in. Like, it was some truly violent, vile stuff. Like, it was appallingly so. So Marcus decided, I almost said his real name. I hope I don't say his real name before I get switched. But anyway, so Marcus had decided that he was going to monitor this too, and he had told his friends, because he had this really tight group of friends that he's still super tight with today. And because this was years ago. And his friends started monitoring Dan's social media too. I think it was when it got like super violent, like borderline like ultra violent with one of his poems, and I'm like, look,
I'm in danger.
Marcus had gotten one of his other friends, pulled him over and was like, yo, this is what's going down. Like, we need to host an intervention because he's really losing it over this girl.
That boy ain't right.
So they sit him down and they're like, fam, we understand how you feel about this girl, but what you're doing ain't cool. You need to calm that down. You need to leave her alone. I'm not entirely sure what all transpired, but know if Marcus knows I had this conversation. Or that I know this conversation about it, at least. Dan calmed down. I eventually, I don't know if he blocked me on social media or unfriended me, or if I did a little while later, I don't know. After we stopped having classes, but I don't know. All I'm saying is the guy turned violent because I wasn't romantically interested in him. Fortunately, he didn't act on it, but like the things he was typing, the poems he was typing, they were pretty scary. But what made it worse was he didn't say it was me. If I hadn't been paying attention to the patterns in our conversation, I would have never known that he was threatening violence against me. And what made it worse were that people in the comments were really thinking that this was a woman who had did something to him. They're like, yo, you know, her, she ain't, woo, you deserve better. And they made it seem like the woman he was talking about was just doing him dirty. And she wasn't, she was me. I was just living my life. Like, I was just trying to be friends with a classmate. And this is what happened. Marcus got Dan to quit. The class ended, the semester ended. Didn't really see Dan anymore. We stopped being connected on social media, whatever. So that's why I say, like, as a woman, what we just saw in this game is truly terrifying for me, because I haven't been obviously in the situation this extreme where a fetish turned into a violent encounter for me, but I was heavily fetishized and there was violent words and inspirations aimed at me. And so to kind of see that in this game, it just kind of made me think about that scenario. Like, never mind the fact that I've actually been followed to my car in broad daylight in front of a shoe store. That's why I say, like, as a woman, this whole thing was terrifying, because, like, from my experiences, just being a woman existing in this space, that made my skin crawl. And I'm not surprised Crane is involved, because the way he treats Snow, you could definitely tell that he's trying to get that wop, and she ain't throwing it back for him. Yeah, like, I'm really thinking about her I'm really sitting here thinking about it, and how he was just like, you evil, you took my heart and you shattered it, or I gave you my heart and you shattered it, and blah 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 blah. And like, fam, I didn't even order your heart. Like, return to sender, addressing, not an address. Like, this is not what I wanted. I asked for it. Is it like a Costco return policy where I can just give it back whenever I don't want it anymore? Because I don't want it. I didn't ask for him. It wasn't like I had led him on, which according to his poems, I did.
How, Sway?
I didn't. This is why there's a post on Facebook that I see every once in a while, and it's like, you can't, and it's a woman, she's like, you can't treat men like human beings, because then they think that you want to sleep with them. Like, I literally just treated him like a person, and the mere mention, like, I never hugged Dan, I never gave him a kiss, I was never like, oh, you so sweet, let's go out for lunch. Nothing. I literally just spoke to him like I'm speaking to you right now, and he would just lose it. Like, he just lost it if I mentioned having a romantic partner or a romantic interest or anything like that. So here's what's really interesting about this story. I mean, obviously the story is already wild. Like, this story is bananas as is. About 8 years ago, so maybe 7-8 years ago, when exactly, doesn't matter, early on in my relationship with my husband, I see, like, we're just sitting next to each other. I am talking to hubby about this So I'm being silly and I'm just put my shoulder on him while he's on his computer. It just so happened he has social media open. And Dan's name scrolls by on his timeline. And I was like, oh, Dan, ew. He was like, dang, really? What's with all of that? So I told him the story that I just told you. And he goes, that was you? Turns out, because I already knew Marcus was his best friend. Turns out that the guy Marcus pulled to the side, or Marcus paired up with to pull Dan to the side, was my husband. Dan got called in by my classmate and my future husband and told to leave me alone. Small world. We'll be back in this game.